Okay. So today's conversation is going to be called Mythbusters. And it's all about updating the story we tell ourselves, because we all have these myths or internal equations that we live by. It's almost like an unquestioned command. And it could be the story you tell yourself to explain fundamental questions we have about what you can or cannot do, unquestioned commands about how people should act or how things are, what's possible or impossible for us, who you are, what you should or shouldn't do. These are all these things that can be under the surface that we tell ourselves, almost like unspoken rules or beliefs. And the key thing with these is that one, we're looking for the ones that are disempowering to us and that limit our joyful experience of life. Because these kinds of limiting beliefs shape our actions, our thoughts, and the feelings we experience. And if we want to own who we are and take control of our lives, we have to take conscious control about these beliefs that might be running under the surface. And in order to do that, we first need to understand what they are. And also we need to understand how they are formed. Because a lot of the times we tell ourselves stuff that just simply is not true, even though we feel strongly that it is true, right? For example, here's an example. We might tell ourselves that, we can't leave a toxic, abusive job situation. Because if we did, we wouldn't have the money we need for our retirement, right? Now, that would be a lie and untrue because we're telling ourselves we can't. The truth is that we won't, because we value financial security ahead of, our own happiness, right? And that this is not the only option in which we can achieve financial security. So we can remove ourselves from this situation. But these myths are the reasons we tell ourselves why we can't change. It's the reason we tell ourselves why we're not allowed to be happy in our life right now. It's the reasons we tell ourselves why we need to avoid doing the progressive thing in our life. Okay, so that's what today's conversation will be about. Now, the first thing we should get clear on, why is it important that we audit ourselves on this stuff? Why is it important that we double check this stuff? Why does this subject matter? Anyone have any thoughts?
I think we can just get in our own head and get in our own story and not really have a wider perspective of what's going on. And we can tell ourselves things that aren't true, which if we were a second party looking or a third party looking at the picture from the outside, it might be a much different case. So I think it's always great to have a reality check periodically.
Yeah. So we can become very delusional.
I also think that we manifest what we think. So stinking thinking, and that's what's going to come to pass.
Love it.
And a lot of it's pre-programmed. You don't necessarily know the story you're telling yourself. It's not in your conscious mind, it's subconscious.
Yeah, which makes it more significant. Yeah, for sure. Chris, do you have any thoughts on it? Why is it important? Why does this subject matter? Chris, I'm just gonna ask you to unmute.
Yeah, that's important. It is a critical issue. It's a high priority issue that if your compass, your beliefs are channeling in a direction, it will affect also your subconscious decisions. Every little decision will go towards that manifestation. I am a poster boy for that bullshit right now. For the issues I'm dealing with, Marge having left, dealing with my money issues, my living issues, having to be still living with my dad and his companion. All that was based on my belief system that I'm obligated to take care of him. I'm obligated to run the business for him and being stuck in this way, but I'm choosing to be stuck out of obligation over happiness. And what I've realized now is that when I had my little breakdown in 2019, when this is all there's going to be, this is what made me not perform in the way. Now that I've broken through that, and we talked about rearranging my values, getting rid of security and safety, working on happiness, things have radically changed. If I was this way back 3 or 4 years ago, had I known all this, a lot of this would not have happened. Because if my value system that I have today, if how I think and focus today was 4 or 5 years ago, I would still be with Marge. My life would be radically different. And that is the danger of having that stinking thinking, giving yourself the luxury, giving yourself the out, giving yourself the excuse that it's okay to have. I mean, you're sometimes justified in some of these areas, but if you let those areas influence you and drive you, they will lead you to places you don't want to be. And you won't realize it until you get there, and it is far too late, because you've now wasted years being on this trek and not having changed when you could have changed years earlier. That is my biggest regret, is the amount of years and time that I've spent being this way and also not having Marge in my life. Those are the 2 biggest regrets I got going on right now that I'm trying to fix.
Perfect.
I think now.
Yeah. So once accepted, as Chris has said, once we accept these beliefs or myths, they become unquestioned commands to how we live our life, and they have the power to completely destroy the possibilities for happiness in present and in future, as is demonstrated by many of our beliefs, right? That is the power of them. Even though we suffer, we go on nourishing these beliefs, defending it and justifying it. Perfect. Steve, any thoughts? Why does this subject matter? I think you might be muted. Oh, yeah, okay, you're unmuted. There you go.
I think it's, if you believe in God, then you have to believe in Lucifer, right? I mean, it's in Genesis, the whole creation, all that kind of thing, right? And
No, but keep going.
What's that?
I said agree to disagree, but keep going.
Okay. So, but there's opposition in all things, right? There's an opposite for all things. And, all growth comes out of opposition. All, great things, they don't come out of ease. They come out of difficulty. They come out of, all of our growth, our maturity, all of that comes out of, difficulty. And our minds want to go toward the path of least resistance, right? They want to protect themselves, right? Tony talks about the 2 million old mind. All it wants to do is protect itself. It sees danger and you get the fight or flight thing, but it doesn't want to keep pushing. And we have to consciously keep changing, keep walking forward, walking in the dark against the strong headwind, whatever that is. And our brains just fall back to our old habits, I mean, and then there's always that vacuum. If we remove one thing, we have to replace it with something else. You can't usually just stop a bad habit. You have to replace it with a good habit. And it's not enough just to not talk down to myself. I have to talk up to myself, right? And so I think that's, really important kind of going through all of this stuff is I can look all around me and see examples of people that don't want to, walk uphill. They don't, want to do uncomfortable things. They want to take the path of least resistance. And I think all of us are, not those types, but the tendency is there in all of us. It's a human tendency, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we have that capacity to consciously change, but it takes effort and you have to keep after it. I mean, I remember one of the sessions we had, where I had to put all those reminders in my phone to remember what I already know, right? Because Brendan's telling me, you already know these. What's good about this? What can I learn? What could be better? Right? Well, I knew that, but I forgot it between, the first and the second UPW, and just the day-to-day, you kind of forget to read my goals, to do my affirmations, to take a second for positive talk or whatever. And I think we just automatically default to that least amount of effort, path of least resistance. And, the winners, the ones that get crap done, they're the people that just don't stop. They're relentless in their pursuit of progression. You notice I didn't say perfection. I said progression, purposely. But, for me, if I am not constantly on my guard to build myself up like that, I very quickly fall back into the patterns that I've had for decades.
Perfect. And to paraphrase what you've said, it takes effort to stay free of the human tendency to lie to ourselves.
Right.
It's human nature to choose comfortable lies instead of uncomfortable truths. And we suffer as a result. As Patty kind of hinted, it's the beliefs and standards that control our life. That's it. We manifest that stuff that we think, and I think to add to some of this stuff, we're often seduced into believing that it's the events of our life that control our life. It's the environment of our life that shapes who we are. But this is one of the greatest lies we can tell ourselves, because it's never the environment and events, but the interpretation or meaning we attach to the environment and events that shapes who we are and who we become. That's really what it comes down to, right? And most of us never consciously selected our beliefs and values. We didn't pay attention to our interpretations of what's happened to us in life. And so we pick up these internal equations or myths or beliefs, and we don't question them. And they control us, and they control our direction in life. And we suffer because of incorrect beliefs, because life just never seems to work out the way we believe it should. And we suffer physically because there's something called a nocebo, which is kind of like a placebo, but with a negative thought, and it creates negative consequences on your body. Psychology becomes physiology. So we pay in many ways for this stuff. Now, one of the things we should talk about is, what are some examples of myths we might tell ourselves? I'll start, okay? Just so we can get clear on some different ways that this might manifest. Somebody might think this. There's a glass ceiling to women in the workforce. And that if I'm a woman, my career success will be limited because I'm a woman. Okay? So we could consider that a myth, because, your creativity is not limited by your gender. Your determination is not limited by your gender. Your guts is not limited by your gender. Your inner resourcefulness is not limited by your gender. Women have achieved tremendous things even though they were women. You're right. So this is actually, the empowering truth is that because you're a woman, there's lots of things you can do that a man can't do, So anyways, that's an example of one. It could be a myth, and somebody could decide not to put a full effort into themselves professionally because they've sort of, they've allowed themselves to have a low standard and just determined it's hopeless because of gender. Okay, so that's an example of one. So who else has an example they could share of a myth?
Can I just give you a complete different concept of that?
What's that?
All right, so a lot of us have, during our childhood, way back when we were children, we've had issues where we've been abandoned. Our needs weren't met in a timely manner. We were abused in some way, either emotionally, verbally, sexually. And we developed strategies at that time, survival strategies, to protect ourselves. So we might think our needs are not as important. We are low maintenance. If I do everything perfectly, no one will be mad at me. And we take a lot, and what happens is that we take these beliefs, these strategies when we were little kids, and we bring them into adulthood, where they no longer have a place, where they're obsolete. They are incorrect. They're just not the right tools for your adult situation, but they never got changed. A lot of people have a lot of these childhood paradigms. Survival techniques can be considered nice guys who don't want to rock the boat, guys who will tell everybody what they want to hear to keep things even, to get their approval. And those are a lot of the issues that I have that I'm working on breaking. Once my values changed, and a lot of that became different. So when you're talking about having these myths came back from your childhood. That's how far back this programming goes. So I just wanted to put that as a consideration.
Perfect. We're going to discuss how they were formed as well. And we're going to really unpack that. We'll do that round 3. Round 2, we're going to go into examples. Round 3, we're going to go into how they were formed. And it's a brilliant point because we do form it as adults as well. And we need to know how they get formed so that we can keep our guard up against these wrong beliefs that block our joyful experience of life. We have to understand how they were formed so we know how to protect ourselves. Love it. I love the fact that you have already appreciated the value of recognizing how they start. That's a very important aspect of this subject.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have an example of myths you guys want me to tell? I'll tell another one. Here's one. A marriage has to be perfect. Somebody might tell themselves that. And then that might cause a lot of pain and suffering because they're going to nitpick every little detail. But the truth is that a marriage can be happy and successful even if it isn't perfect. After all, how can you be perfect in a world that isn't perfect? So there's another example of like a myth somebody might tell themselves that might block their joyful experience of life.
Kind of playing into that, the roles that you play in a marriage too, what the male's supposed to do, what the female's supposed to do. And a lot of times you learn that from your parents and your previous experience, but your spouse had a different experience and different expectations, but coming in with those roles predefined.
Yeah. Yeah, and the truth is, so you might be like, okay, the man has to make the money, the woman has to cook and clean. The truth is, we can decide, we can do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done in order to make this thing work. That's the empowering truth. And we can be completely flexible, but we might get ossified into these expectations, right? Love it. Perfect example.
Can I throw another thing out there?
Yeah, go ahead.
We in our relationships, in our marriages, sometimes we co-create other relationships we have with our parents. So what will happen is we will recreate that dysfunctional relationship in our current relationship because that's what seems normal to us. So one person might play the role of the healthy one, and another person will play the role of the broken one. And then they'll play that same dysfunctional relationship that they had back when they were kids or previously, and they never deconstructed it. So they're recreating because it's familiar and they think that this is what it's supposed to be. So like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, I would say that's definitely one of the big causes of a myth is that we are role modeling people who are not worthy to be role modeled in the first place, because their way of being was blocking their joyful experience of life. And so we copy it and we mimic those who we shouldn't have been copying. That is absolutely one of the ways that we do this, probably because it was convenient. So we may copy the way that a parent deals with conflict. We may copy the way that, a parent or sibling blames everyone else for their problems, and we think that's what we need to do, and the way that they justify bad moods and do all kinds of things. And we decide that that's the way to be without questioning it, right? Lacking wise discrimination in choosing role models, definitely a big cause of this.
I think just broadening out where you were starting with some universal myths, saying you have to go to college in order to be successful.
Yes.
Would be one. And then on a more individual level, I can't fall in love because every time I fall in love, I get heartbroken. I can't be my real self because I'm going to be judged. I can't step up to the plate to try something new because I don't know how I'm going to respond when I fail, or I already know I'm going to fail. So those are more individualized, myths, I would say.
Yeah. And I think one of the things is too, we might as well just deal with causes at the same time, right? One of the things is a lot of times we link a false cause. So you mentioned I can't fall in love or I'll get hurt. So what happens is when somebody's in a really intense experience, they will link things up inappropriately. They might realize that they're really in love. And then at the moment they're really in love, all of a sudden there's a sudden devastating breakup. So then they think, that's because I was really in love. Now I need to protect my heart, right? When really the truth of the matter is that you and your partner were just misaligned on your values and beliefs in a relationship. It had nothing to do with the love factor. But then you might go on, never really letting anyone close, putting up walls, and living a life by that false cause that got linked up in the head, right? So that is definitely one of the things that happens all the time. For sure. Anyone else have any examples? Steve, any examples?
Yeah, two. One is, it takes money to make money. So I can't invest or I can't start a business because I don't have money. And, if I was born into a rich family, then, maybe I could, whatever. That was one. And the one I just thought that is more personal for me is just how we view failure, because my whole life I've viewed failure as, all right, you piece of crap, you suck bad. If you fail, then there is some inherent lack of value that is being displayed, or something like that, for not being able to succeed at something, or whatever it is. One of the first times I went snow skiing was up at Lake Tahoe in California, and I fell down 17 times. I'm like, this is not fun, but I could water ski. I just couldn't snow ski. And, and it took me a long time of, I should be out trying crap and failing on stuff and not avoiding new things just because I may fail at it, or, whatever, because you don't have to be the best at everything you try, right? If I go pick up a golf club and swing like crap and miss the ball, it's not realistic to have an expectation that I could pick up a golf club and go win a PGA Tour, or that everything I do, I could be at the top of the world in anything I ever did. I get behind the wheel, I should win the Indy 500, right? I pick up a basketball, I should win NBA championship in 4 games. It's just not realistic. But, I've looked at failure for a long time is, not as a learning process, not as a, necessary part of life, but more as a invalidation of worth, of not being good at something, or trying a lot of things that I failed at and going, wow, I suck real bad. And now, I still kind of dabble in that. I try not to, but I'm very much more getting out, trying new things. Maybe it's new foods, new places, doing new things, whatever. And some of them I like, some I don't, some I'm good at, some I'm not. But Just, like if I'm trying to learn a new trick on my mountain bike, I'm not going to stop just because I can't do it. I would keep trying it. I mean, I wish I could, ride a wheelie for 100 yards on my bike, but right now in reality, I can only get like 5 pedal rotations and then I lose my balance. But, it's something that, this coming year, I want to work on that and getting on there and just riding as far as I can. Like some of these guys I see online going, I could do that. I have the foundation of a skill set to be able to do that with enough practice. And if I want that bad enough, I can go make that happen. But I will fail 1,000 times before I get there. But in that situation, it wouldn't bug me because it's something I love and it's a skill I'd want to acquire. I just don't take that same mindset with a lot of other crap in my life. And so that kind of goes back to my being consciously getting after it, because otherwise I tend to be, avoiding those types of situations where I go, yeah, I don't need another failure today. Let's just tap out and watch Netflix.
All right. Nice. So some big concepts I heard in there. And one is that, a lot of people think failure is a reflection of them and their worth as a human.
Right.
They hinge that thing up, which is a myth. And then they think to protect my value and my self-worth, I must avoid failure. And so they associate massive pain to failure. Makes me want to crawl into a hole and die. Right. But the empowering truth, as you've described, is that failure is a result, not a person. And it can be a stepping stone to success because it can teach us how to be wiser and better for future, right? But that's a perfect example of a myth. Perfect example of a myth, right? So yeah, and you also mentioned that I need to avoid things I may fail at, but the truth is you don't have to be perfect in order to succeed at things. So lots of examples of myths. Another one I heard, it was, I can't ask other people for help because I have to avoid being a burden on other people. That is something people have told themselves. But the empowering truth is, I'm more of a burden if I wait for things to get worse before I ask for help. It's like, that's actually the truth. Another thing is, Steve mentioned like takes money to make money, or there's not enough money. That might be a myth. But the truth could be, right, that I can be resourceful and do more with less. There's no lack of resources, just resourcefulness, right?
Yeah, and I think kind of along that too is one of that's kind of wrapped up a couple others we've talked about, is that I can't ask people for what I want, right? I can't be honest in what I want, whether it's your intimate relationship or whether, someone asks you and not feeling like you can't say no to every request that comes across your desk, both in a work situation or in a personal situation, or that, if I need something from my employer or, a friend or a colleague or whatever it is, that I can't go ask and receive that thing for whatever reason, right? Either they're going to say no, or I'm being selfish, or, whatever. But, you don't get stuff that you want in life if you don't ask for it.
Yeah. So I love this one, right? Is that I can't be honest in asking for what I want. People not only use this in work, they use it in relationships. And they, like, for example, I've had a couple women I coached, and one of their beliefs that was causing a lot of trouble was that I want a man to be able to know what my needs are without me communicating and then meet those needs for me.
That's awesome. Good luck with that.
That's not just one person. That's multiple people. When I boiled it down, this was what you're believing. Okay. What's the empowering truth, right? Like, men are not like mind readers. The empowering truth is if you ask for what you want, you're more likely to get it. It's that simple.
Well, too, and you've got to look at that too, right? Whether you're talking about the opposite sex in an intimate relationship or friends or colleagues or whatever, the truth of the matter is men and women are different. We think different. We have different priorities. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. And, you know, we don't think alike. And that is, you know, I'll just tell you a real quick joke just for everyone's benefit here. So this guy's walking down the beach and he's had a fight with his wife, and he kicks over this genie bottle, and this genie pops out and says, you know, hey, I'm going to give you one wish, anything you want. And, you know, the guy's like, well, I really want to go to Hawaii. And, you know, I'm living here in California. I'm scared to death to fly. So I would love for you to build me a bridge from California to Hawaii. I'll just drive my car, and then I can go see this place I've wanted to know my entire life. And so the genie starts doing all the math, and he's thinking, like, how far is it from California to Hawaii? How deep is the ocean? All the piers to support this bridge to get him all the way to Hawaii. And he's just like, there's no way, this is too much. And he says, I will give you anything else, but I just cannot do that one thing. And the guy says, okay, can you help me understand my wife? And the genie says, did you want that road in 2 lanes or 4?
Love it. Love it. And, you know, it reminds me of the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I read it
Right.
many years ago.
Well, and the thing is, like, you just, you know, we think we approach things from a different angle, just in very simplistic, you know, terms. You know, women want to be heard, men want to fix. And so we come automatically from different angles, looking at a problem or an opportunity or the ways we communicate. And there's not a man on planet Earth that is going to automatically know what another woman wants and to give that to her without her asking. And it goes the other way as well. I mean, there's just no possible way. And if you don't communicate and ask for what you want, we're never going to get it.
Well, and this is something that may get linked up through observing an example. So I know in one case that it was that this person would see their father, you know, doing the lawn and doing the dishes and the laundry, and then the mother saying, see, he knows what I want and he does it without being asked. But then when that idea gets formed, they assume total strangers are going to be able to predict this and must be able to, because they've misinterpreted what was happening, right? So for sure. So in terms
Add
of how
something
these,
to that.
sorry,
I just wanted to add something to that. The other thing about saying what you want is it's not enough to say it just once. Because, like, I can tell you, hey, I really want you to do the dishes whenever we're done with dinner. And it's great to say it at that moment, but, you know, the next day, maybe there's a game on or something like that, and they aren't thinking about it. It's not that they don't want to do it or don't want to fulfill that. It's not that they don't understand what was asked. It's not in their brain at that moment. And I think that's a big problem too. We think, okay, we've communicated this. Why aren't they following through? And different people have different thought patterns, and you can't assume that everybody is prioritizing your thoughts or even remembers them, and it's not deliberate. And I think that's the problem. A lot of women assume it's deliberate when guys don't follow through.
yeah. And I would say that, to me, the definition of maturity is being able to relate to the realities of other people and see things from their perspective too, instead of assuming that everybody is just like us.
And I think to Charmaine's point, I was talking to my wife. I can't remember if it was before or after our house fire, but I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. If you have asked me to do something or something kind of along what Charmaine just described, if you word it like this, then this will not be nagging to me. If you say, I forget how I worded it, but something along the lines of, hey, this is just the reminder you asked for. Are you going to get this done? Or are you working on this today? And then that was all me saying, if you say it like this, then that is me asking you to ask me to do the thing that I might have forgotten because I'm, worried about something else on the house, or there's something I have to take care of, or mow the lawn before dark, or whatever it is. And so when I framed it like that, for her to approach me like that, then that was all on me to not get upset with that, because that was my social contract with her, to say, this is you. Otherwise, a couple of those times of, are you going to do the dishes, and stop nagging me, that crap is pissing me off, because it comes off totally different. But that again comes back to, asking for what you want, and saying, if you can approach me this way, that's all on me. And if you need something, like that, then I will do that as well. And that really helped a lot, to where that whole thing was gone. That became a non-issue.
I love the way you worded that. Hey, this is the reminder you asked for.
Right.
Because in that way, they're spotting you on staying true to your values.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, yep, I have to do this one thing, and then I was going to get to it, but then it took away any resentment or any baggage attached to it. So that was really helpful. And I don't even know how I came up. I just thought about that one day, but that would have been helpful 25 years ago too,
Awesome. Joel, did you have anything to add?
A few things. I mean, I had a similar challenge with what Steve had, and I just find that I would get defensive if somebody would call me on my stuff, because I would be wrapped up in some other task that I'm trying to do, and it's like, in my mind, when I felt like I was getting pulled away from it, even though I had kind of committed to something else, it's like it's sabotaging both things, because now I have to restart what I'm doing now. So yeah, I found that, like he did, that it's very helpful to kind of just have a wording or a phrasing that's helpful to tap into that. And then just going back a step to some of the myths. One that I tell myself sometimes is there's not enough hours in the day, when really I don't use my time as nearly as well as I could. So it's really not a matter of having more time. It's a matter of being more resourceful. And then also just that sometimes I'll focus on the stuff that I'm not getting done instead of the stuff that I am getting done. Like, I won't give myself credit for every little thing I get done. I just keep looking at the massive list that still has to get done. And so sometimes the myth might be that, it's just an overwhelming amount of things that need to get done, when in reality, it's all progress.
Love it. One of the ones I really liked you said right off the top was myth. People shouldn't call me out on my stuff. So when somebody points out something or brings it to your attention, we might go into attack mode and be like, this is the time to attack. And how dare you call me out on my stuff? And I'm going to determine this is disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. When the actual truth is that people are helping you reach for your higher potential. We need the reality checks of other people. We can't see all of our own opportunities to be better. We can't see all of the obstacles that are in our own way. We need the other people, and they're just highlighting it for us like, hey, right? So that's a good point. Patty, did you want to add something at all? Any thoughts?
I was thinking about a couple of things, how as a culture, we tend to use politics and religion as a way to create myths in order to incentivize certain things, depending upon which way you want people to think. So there's that, without getting too controversial here. And then if I could just dip my toe in this about COVID and the pandemic, at the very beginning, and as most all of you know, I work in the medical community, but at the start of the pandemic, Americans were told that masks were ineffective. And the part of the reason behind that, belief was to refrain from buying masks in mass. And that led more masks for the frontline healthcare workers, because they didn't want toilet paper hoarding happening with the masks. So myths can have power too when they're manipulated. And we also see that in psychology, where they manipulate myths, and we see it in the medical community as well. For example, giving placebos, and all of a sudden people start feeling better, right? So the myth is, if you take this pill, you'll feel better. And so they take the placebo and they're like, hey, I feel great, right? So there's some of that. Sometimes there's value in the myths, or those myths can be manipulated in a way to move people one way or the other.
Right. Very, very good example. We leave ourselves open to manipulation and being misled if we don't check this stuff. And I think, we've talked about some of the reasons, some of the ways in which this happens and we get caught in myths. Many of them are generalizations or interpretations about stuff that happened in the past. Most of us don't consciously decide on what we believe. It's based on our interpretation of past experience. And once we adopt a belief, we forget that it's just an interpretation and we treat it like reality and we rarely question it. But it really comes down to accepting a thought or idea without critically assessing it to see if it was in fact true. And then moving forward confidently and never questioning it. In fact, defending it, arguing for it, and justifying it in the face of strong counter evidence that it isn't true. Like, that is really the trap we get caught in. And that's why I think, a good way to travel forward in life is to, hold our beliefs lightly, because we have major capacity to deceive ourselves, right? To test and see what is true for ourselves, and then to stay curious, even though we think we've got it all figured out and we've got all these rules on how to live life and beliefs. We need to stay curious. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts?
Something real quick.
Yeah,
something I heard this week was somebody suggesting once a week you sit down with, whether it's your family or something like that, and say one thing that you admired about somebody that week and one area that you saw that you think they could grow. And it trains you to be used to accepting, those opportunities for growth, which usually come across as criticism, but it trains you to expect it and also kind of accept it in a different way if you do it at a regular cadence like that. And I thought that was a neat idea.
That's I love that, because it's kind of like a really good support group.
Yeah.
Just helping support each other.
And it comes from a good place then. It's not just criticism for the sake of criticism.
Yeah. It's the way we interpret it. That's the thing. All things are neutral until we interpret it and judge, good or bad. Right? If we say opportunity for growth, well, now we feel like we're being supported. Whereas other people might assume that when somebody points out an opportunity for growth, that they are lowering your value as a human, because your value is based on what other people think of you. Right? So it's two different interpretations. Right? So now let's talk about solutions. So first of all, how do we find these things? We need to find these beliefs that are under the surface, that are disempowering us and blocking our joyful experience of life. How do we find them? Anyone have any thoughts?
I think you can
like you said, a lot of the ideas,
said, right?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, asking, sometimes they're really hard. I mean, you could really look for a long time yourself, but like Tremaine's example, if someone's pointing it out to you, you tend to react a certain way in, these types of situations. Well, there's probably a belief there that's leading to that reaction or that emotion or something like that. I'd say probably one of the fastest ways would be just asking people you trust, kind of, what are my blind sides? What is the thing that is so autopiloted in my brain right now that I don't even recognize it? Where someone else can go, oh, well, this. So for me, I think you would have to ask people you trust to be able to try to get to that, as fast as possible.
I think if you have an emotional reaction to something, that's a good key that you should dig in deeper. But also, I think it helps because so much of this, like you said, comes from us observing other people as we grow up, or just experiences, and we don't realize we form these beliefs. So if you have somebody that can really dig in with you and ask you, why do you believe that? What does this really mean to you? Because most of the time we haven't thought about it. We haven't gone that deep. We're stuck in autopilot. We just repeat these patterns and haven't really considered why we believe it ourselves. And in the experience of talking through it, sometimes we talk ourselves out of it, or we realize the flaws in some of our thinking.
Love it. Love it. Lots of, that one was really loaded with a lot of profound wisdom. And I really like, the emotional reaction and double checking. And a big thing to ask when you have that emotional reaction is, what do I have to believe in order to be feeling this way right now? If you're getting triggered, if you're getting angry, there's a rule that has been violated by you or somebody else. What do you believe that rule is? And, is it really true, even though you feel so strongly about it? But yeah, double checking on those emotional reactions. Patty, did you have a thought?
I think also just as powerful is some personal reflection, just journaling out some things and being able to go back and look at the patterns of where the frustration is to see there, and writing down areas where you're feeling challenged, because there's usually a belief system there that's, a myth.
Those two ideas are brilliant. Brilliant. So, what parts of your life story aren't working out for you? Where are you being challenged? And then journaling it is also a brilliant idea, which absolutely really helps us out with this kind of a situation. Carry a little notebook around with you for 2 days. Jot down your self-talk, the things you say to yourself, but do not speak out loud. Notice, in particular, the negative messages you give to yourself and the things you tell yourself when you're upset. Anything repeated more than twice a day is hugely significant. Write down those messages. That is a very good way to audit yourself for these broken myths that are limiting us in life.
And then one other thing I wanted to say on that is I went to coffee recently with a friend of mine. She's probably about 24 or so, 23, 24. And so we're hanging out having coffee, and I look at her and I said, wait a second. Your skin looks so beautiful today. And she goes, I'm not wearing any makeup. And I go, you're right, you're not wearing any makeup. And she said, no, I stopped wearing makeup last month. She said, I put everything underneath the sink and stored it away because I had this belief that kept coming up that I wasn't pretty unless I wore makeup. So she says, now I'm purposefully not wearing makeup and I feel pretty. And I know that I am beautiful and I don't need the makeup to do it. Now, her whole attitude has changed, but this came out of some personal reflection that she had done about what she believed to be a myth about herself.
Yes, and the empowering truth that she can feel pretty and look pretty without makeup. I love that. That's a great example. And that came out of journaling. And
that came out of journaling for her. And then the other thing is, I believe people's physical environment reveals a lot about what's going on internally. So even, organizing your space and trying more minimalism can kind of help clear stuff out. Like, I don't feel good unless I'm in the latest fashion. Okay, really? Is there not enough in your closet to work with? So those kinds of things I think are important. And then I can't circle back around fast enough to just highlight what you said, Brendan, about curiosity, because we always have to be exploring our beliefs. And I don't believe that we are truly exploring those with curiosity unless we are having these types of discussions with, the people close to us, right? We're talking about everyday things, and something comes up and it challenges us and it gives us something to look at.
Nice. Nice. Love it. Love it. Chris, did you have any thoughts to share? Oh, Chris, you're on mute. I'm just going to ask you to unmute quickly.
I think everything I've been sharing has been in the chat. So things like when she was talking about that woman deciding that the makeup wasn't good enough, that was an attachment. The makeup is what made people like me, is what the myth was. But when she stopped wearing the makeup, people still liked her. It meant they liked her for her, not because the makeup made her pretty. It's like if she let her car be dirty for an entire month and lived in Seattle with all the grime and dirt that got it, and then felt that made her, people liked me because my clean car. My car's no longer clean, but people still liked her. And even when she washed it, people didn't like her any less. So there's that attachment. That's part of the issue. And what was the other part of the topic?
How do we find these myths?
I think, like you said, having someone who knows you well to be able to see you objectively. Like when I'm going to ask Marge to see what was my thinking, decision-making like when we were living together, because I was so caught up in trying to make people like me in such a different way. I don't want to have those thinking strategies anymore. I want her to show me those strategies so I can kill them and do something different. So by her seeing that objectively and telling me that, I can now change those. And now I'm willing to change those because I have different values and I'm in a different place. So it's a lot easier for me to want to change, which is also a key issue. People have got to want to change and search for that change. That's when mentors start to show up. That's when different opportunities show up because you're starting to change and you're willing to accept that change. And they're stepping up for that challenge. I'm here in the office working on my client's paperwork. I never had a client before. What do I know? So here I am doing that extra work, and that's part of leveling up my game. So how do we find these myths? We're already living those myths if you're at your baseline. But as you start to find them and challenge them and change them, different things, the more your life changes, the more those old myths are being sent away and being replaced. And now we give a vacuum for new myths to come in. It's a vacuum. The old ones can still come in. But if you start to change and you start to have those opportunities show up, those lucky things that start to change because you've changed, those things will then create new beliefs, new myths, and that will take the place of the old ones.
Yep.
And I also want to speak to positive affirmations, because I believe when we can work through positive affirmations, we may hear something or we're saying something, we're like, wait, I don't really believe that. Then you can be like, okay, there's obviously a myth there that needs to be worked through.
Patty, that book, Enormous Nice Guy, I listened to the audio at least 15 times in a row. And even then, things just started to click in after like the 13th or 14th listening. So when you're saying these positive affirmations don't always hook in because of your old identity, you still have to hammer on. It's still some of those chapters are very painful for me to listen to. It really literally hurts to hear how I was behaving because I say, oh, I did that. I did do that. And so, you have that pain of that, but as you listen to that message over and over again, it will start to gel. But you have to give it time for that positive affirmation to gel, to feel that pain, to feel that, that pain, that guilt, that remorse, that shame, and then replace those negative feelings with the new affirmation. But it takes time to do that.
We all have affirmations that are in our head. We all have things that we think and routine things that we think. And the more we make a conscious effort to put the ones in that we want, the better it is. And I said something in the chat about sometimes verbalizing is important because once you verbalize, you hear it differently. And sometimes whenever I'm not in a great mindset, if I start verbalizing it, I'll start talking myself out of it. And it's just the power of actually speaking it and hearing it. Then I start more deliberately saying things, and it's a natural progression that I shift out.
Hey, that just made me think of a myth. Sticks
Okay.
and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Yes.
Right, but the truth is, right, when you're a kid, right, that shit hurts, right? When like kids are picking on you in the 3rd grade and whatever, and like that's something you say, you're like, hey, leave me, whatever, right? But the truth is, I mean, words can hurt. And, I'm sure we've all said things to people that, we wish we could take back. We've all had stuff said to us that, I was like, I think I want to knock out your teeth for that one. And, but it is. And we always talk about, positive affirmations, because there's so many negative affirmations out there that we have to qualify it as a Tony Robbins positive affirmation, because it is whatever you hear over and over and over is going to become your truth, right? I mean, look at all the propaganda. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, what it is. You repeat something, whether it's an intentional lie or a benign idea, over and over enough, and people believe it. It could be the truth that the color blue is the best color in the world, and that is true. But if you think orange is, if I keep saying it over and over enough, eventually you might just believe that blue's better than orange, and it really is. But, with those things, the things that we tell ourselves, the thoughts, the words that we allow to come out of our mouth or be verbalized in our head, they make a difference, right? I got lit up one day, years and years ago. I saw a picture of me diving into Lake Powell. And, I was like, oh, we love Lake Powell, right? And I didn't really realize that I was in like a bad state or anything, but I saw that picture of me diving in, and I didn't have my feet together. My legs were like all out, and I wasn't doing some goofy, cool, whatever. I was just diving, and I got so pissed off at myself that I didn't dive into the water with my legs, whatever. And it just immediately set me off on this. I can't do anything right. I suck at everything I do, whatever. And it was so bizarre. It was just some stupid little dive into this place I love being at. And I didn't focus on being at the lake. I didn't focus on the great weather, the water skiing, any of that crap. And I, Brendan's going to say it, I interpreted this picture completely irrationally and just, lost my mind for a while and got really pissed off at myself. And there was no reason for it. It's just the interpretation of a failure of a stupid picture that had no meaning. Right? And if I had immediately verbalized, oh man, that was an awesome day being at Lake Powell, instead of, you piece of crap, why can't you dive? You know how to dive. What's wrong with you? Why'd you do it wrong? What are you, stupid? Are you 3? Whatever. And I didn't verbalize to myself properly, and I easily could have. And whatever voice we hear over and over is the voice we're going to believe, whether it's true or not.
Nice. Joel, do you have anything you want to add before we move forward a step?
No, I'm curious to see where we go from here.
Okay, so first step is to find them. We've had some great ideas on finding it. We can ask ourselves, what are the limiting beliefs that's producing unwanted or negative consequences in life? As Charmaine mentioned, if you have an emotional reaction, what do you have to believe in order to feel that way? As Patty mentioned, where are you being challenged? What parts of your life story aren't working out for you? As Steve mentioned, you can ask people you trust if they've recognized some of these limiting myths that you have. Patty mentioned we can journal for patterns of frustration and get clear on what it is. We could also do fill in the blanks. I give people fill in the blanks. I'll say this.
I was just going to say that. Fill in the blank. I can't do this because, bam.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the ones I was going to say. I can't blank, thwarted ambition because of, whatever reason, right? Do you have another one?
I can't rebrand my company because I don't know what I'm doing. I can't even start a business because I don't know how to do it. There's no way I could ever be married because I suck at relationships. I could go.
Or even crap like all the good ones are taken, right? You hear that all the time. All the good ones, bull crap, right? I mean, Joel and I, yes, and Brennan, I mean, we are taken. That is true, right? But I mean, but that is the thing. Don't think that I have heard of fill in the blank used in this type of, situation, but just kind of joking about several of those, though. I mean, that's a great thing of just thinking, why can't I do something? Or I can't do it because I've never done it before, right? Regardless, yeah. I can't do it because I've never done it before. I've never started a company. I've never bought a house. I've never moved to a new place or, whatever.
Yeah. And another way we could do it is we could start off with fill in the blank. What holds me back is blank, right? What holds me back is that my parents didn't raise me right. What holds me back is that my home life is not the right environment for me to succeed. What holds me back is my gender. What holds me back is my age. What holds me back is my lack of formal education. What holds me back is this. Just over and over and over. Anything that we could say after what holds me back is, right? Another thing we could say is, I'd like to blank, but blank, right? It's a very similar way to do it. And then another way that I would do this is fill in the blank. Something that stresses me is that I have to blank. Now, this is a myth because it implies no freedom in the matter when you say I have to. Instead, we should say I choose to. Right? They could say something that stresses me is that I have to stay married to this person that treats me like crap because of the kids and because of our finances are so tied up in the house and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you have freedom in the matter. You choose to. Saying you have to would be a lie. Even an arranged marriage. People are saying, oh, what stresses me out is that I have an arranged marriage to this guy who's like a Disney villain, and I just know it's going to be the end of happiness for me. And it's like, no, you could run away right now. Like you could abandon your family and everyone else, and you could just skip town and start a new life. You don't have to do anything. You're not being held in shackles and forced into this situation. But people will convince themselves that they have no freedom in the matter. And that's where this stuff can be very powerful in robbing the joyful experience of life, right?
No, you don't understand. For me, it's different.
That would be another myth right there too, though, right? Is that you don't have the power to do something. You're powerless to change your circumstances, right? You wouldn't be able to possess the skill set or whatever to do that. That it's completely and will always be out of your control. But then
nothing works out for me. I have bad luck, right?
Right.
This is
I have the worst luck ever.
This is the total victim mentality. It just goes in that whole mindset of nothing,
Learn helplessness.
Right, but a lot of it too, though, is that then I don't have to do anything either, right? It's not my fault. I don't have to do anything. I'm done.
So it's a
not my fault.
Escape.
It's not my fault. The government's holding me down, or the projects are holding me down, or this or that, or this president, or this whatever. If I have no control over it, then I don't have to do a damn thing. And
if I don't try, I can't really fail.
Right. And that's a total myth, right? And part of that is that people want to be the victim for attention or significance or whatever. But part of it is that just people, they don't want to be held accountable for their own actions. And if it's not my fault, if I can't do anything about it, then you can't hold me accountable for it. And I don't have to do anything. And I'm just going to sit here and, watch Jerry Springer and eat Cheetos.
Perfect. It's a good life. Compared to the lives people had 1,000 years ago with harsh, brutal weather conditions and stuff, still a good life.
Right?
Now, so step one is to find it. We now have a lot of good strategies on how to find it. Step two is to challenge it. Challenge it. Doubt and question it for its validity. And do your best at this, because you will have resistance come up against challenging it. And you need to decide in advance that it doesn't matter what is true. It matters what belief is most empowering. Because a lot of times people are so convinced that their limiting beliefs are true, and you will not talk them out of it, but you've got to be like, let's just agree that what's important is what belief is most empowering. So I would ask people, here's how we could challenge it. We could say, how is this belief invalid? How is it ridiculous or absurd? Are there exceptions to this? Why is it absolutely false? Could it be a misinterpretation or a misperception? Do you have all the possible information to know exactly what this means? Was the person you learned this from worth modeling in this area? Right? If we see how, maybe we grew up in a dysfunctional household and we see it's dysfunctional, why are we modeling the dysfunctional methods used by the people in our household for social dynamics? Right? They were never worthy of that. Right? They were good. Some people are teachers and other people are teachings. They give us a demonstration of what not to do. Right? But we confuse it, and we confuse them as a demonstration of what to do. Right? Anyone else have any thoughts on how to challenge it?
Challenging will not be a quick process. This process will take weeks, if not months. This is something that will come up again and again, and usually at your worst times. Battles don't show up when you're ready for them. They show up when you're on the ground dying. So when you think about trying to challenge these beliefs, they only show up when things are bad.
I want to challenge that thought.
I agree.
That's very absolute, and I don't think that's totally true. It can be, but that doesn't mean it's true.
And maybe it can be an easy process.
There you go. See?
I think what Chris is talking about is replacing the belief can take time, maybe, but challenging it we could do in an instant. Oh, everybody's frozen. Am I the only one unfrozen right now?
I've had to run a stoplight at 5 a.m. because it just would not go over, and it cycles through all the other directions.
Right.
And okay, well, the light's supposed to go green at some point, and it didn't, and I just ran it, and whatever. But there's so many things that we attach absolute value to that aren't absolute. And if I try something one time and make a judgment that every other time will always be like that, I mean, look how many people with trauma, right? Something happens, so it's always that, right? A woman goes on, gets sexually assaulted, so she can't ever go on a date again because all men are rapists or attackers or this or that. Or, every time I go downtown, I'm going to get mugged. Or whatever, these things aren't true, but our brain for some reason wants absolute because it's hard for our brains to deal with uncertainty sometimes. And so I like that idea of, why would this be an absolute truth? Maybe it's true in some circumstances and not others. And I need to separate those for, and do more investigation into that on challenging some of my myths. And so I think that's just a thought that I hadn't, thought about before, is just trying to say, okay, let's subset some circumstances and then maybe everything's different.
Well, it's also what you're tuned into also. I mean, if you're tuned into a lot of negativity, if you have like Fox News on 24/7 and all you're getting is like this junk or whatever, whoever you're God, love, compassion, kindness, all these great qualities, if you're just, prayerfully thinking how I can be of service today, you're going to have a whole different set of resources than if you're just listening to all the garbage that people throw at you. So that's important too.
I think it's also important to be careful where we have two very polarizing viewpoints, because I mean, really across the board, it doesn't matter that our views are different. Most people essentially, I think, mean good and mean things to, be good. And if we look at people based on those polarizing viewpoints, we won't see the good in people.
Yeah. A couple of good points. Sorry, my internet shook up there for a little bit. A lot of times when I'm getting to this point, challenging the limiting beliefs, and a resistance will come up, and it'll be a story they tell themselves in terms of why they can't change the beliefs. And I always remind people, who controls what you focus on? You do. And can you change what you focus on? Yes, of course. Who controls what you believe? We do, right? Can you change what you believe? Yeah, you can. When can you change what you believe?
Anytime.
Right now, if you want to. So a girl might think, oh, I'm hot and sexy. And people will be like, well, why do you believe that? And she'll be like, well, when I'm walking down the street, cars are honking. And then you could say, actually, I know those drivers and they were honking because they wanted you to get out of the way because you were walking on the road. They wanted you to get on the sidewalk. All of a sudden, you change what you believe because we just messed with your references. Your references for your belief can be reframed and reinterpreted at any moment. And so challenging a belief can be instant to overcome it. Now, the key things to lasting change, there's a few more steps. One is to link pain to the old belief. I really love and respect Chris. And when he talks about some of his experience and the pain Chris has experienced, in a way, I'm actually happy for him because I know that pain is progress. Because I know that unless you hit a pain threshold, you don't create lasting change, right? So in many ways, I don't want to say, hey, man, I'm really happy that was painful for you. But in many ways, I'm like, it's going to be okay for him. He's going to be okay. He's on the right path. So we want to ask ourselves, we want to get really emotional about those limiting beliefs. We want to ask, what will it ultimately cost me emotionally if I don't let go of this belief? What's it going to cost my self-esteem and how I feel about myself and the emotions I deal with on a daily basis? What will it cost me in my relationships if I don't let go of this belief? What will it cost me physically, wearing me down with stress if I don't let go of this belief and poor sleep? What will it cost me financially if I don't let go of this stuff? What will it cost my family and my loved ones if I don't let go of this? And if I didn't have this thought or idea stuck in my head, how would I feel, behave, or experience life? What would life be like? What's the good stuff I'm missing out on right now? You want to link such intense pain that you'll want to rid yourself of this forever. And then you're ready to move forward. And then we just need to replace it. We need to replace it. And there's a number of different ways to replace it. Who wants to share their thoughts on how we can move forward and replace this myth or limiting belief?
We can rewrite it as an empowering belief rather than a myth.
Perfect. So turn it around. What is the empowering truth? That one question, you apply it to any myth. What is the empowering truth? I love to say empowering truth because I don't want to just settle for truth, because a lot of times the truth can just be like neutral and it can be kind of discouraging. You know, I'd say, what is the empowering truth? Putting that kind of a slant on it makes a big difference. One word makes a big difference, right? Oftentimes, the antithesis is true. I just take the belief and I flip it to the opposite. If somebody says, I can't get out of this relationship, the empowering truth is, I can get out of this relationship, right? Usually, the empowering truth is the opposite of whatever you've been telling yourself. And even if you don't believe that that's possible, you can frame it in terms of potential. I have the potential to get out of this situation. I have the potential to make the best of this. I have the potential to figure it out somehow. I have the potential to make the best of it if I commit to it, right? So emphasizing potential can be a good way.
I think training yourself to recognize some of the key things that you say that identify some of these things. Like we were talking earlier about how there's very few real absolutes. So anytime you're speaking in absolutes or speaking in the future in a factual manner, like this is what will happen in the future, this is how this will go, you should catch those moments and realize, okay, that can't possibly be true, or I can't possibly know that, you know, and then you can recognize the other side of things. I think also it's important to choose to be deliberate, because like we were saying earlier, so much of it is subconscious. The more you put that to the front of your mind and choose to make deliberate choices or have things that you can repeat to yourself, like, I mean, we were talking positive affirmations, but it doesn't even have to be that, but where you can just kind of speak some sort of truth about what is true in those moments. And those are the words that come to your mind, like Steve's reminders that he had before, or, you know, whenever we say some of the things from Tony Robbins, like, what if life was happening for me? You know, those kinds of things, when you bring them to the front of your mind, shift your beliefs.
And I was just having a thought too, is, you know, we've got to realize what our own limitations are, like on our brains, right? Because I think we tend to think that something happens more frequently than it does. You know, we see something and it seems like, oh yeah, this is always happening, right? And part of that, you know, could be the whole, you know, reticular activating system, all that kind of thing. But you can find what you're looking for in the world, right? If you feel like people are assholes, you can find evidence of that everywhere. If you feel like people are caring and genuine and all of that, you will find that. I mean, it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter, you know, where you are, small town, big city. You can find what you're looking for. But at the same time, I think, you know, our brains tend to, or we look on things that we experience and seem to maybe multiply how often something is, you know, because when we say, oh, that always happens, well, it's happened twice. You know, give me a break. Something's happened to me twice in my life. This doesn't happen all the time, you know, but it's easy to think that you see something happen a couple of times, that it's always going to happen like that, or that, you know, whatever. So, you know, to Charmaine's point of, you know, being deliberate, is just taking a step back and going, okay, I know I can go find whatever I'm looking for. You know, whatever argument, you know, whatever argument it is, I can go find what I'm looking for. So that can either support or break my myth if I'm being deliberate or not.
Yeah, look at all the people who look for the number 1111, right? Or like, I see my birthday all over the place. But it's what you train yourself to look for, right?
Right.
Love it. Love it. So some other things we might want to ask ourselves is, what would I have to believe in order to succeed in this area of my life in which I'm challenged? What would I have to believe? So somebody might believe, no women can be trusted, right? Maybe they were in a relationship and they got cheated on, but then they can believe that some women can be trusted. I know of women in my life that are certainly trustworthy. Perfect. That's what you have to believe in order to move forward in relationships, right? We could also think, who is already succeeding in this area and what do they believe differently than I do about what's possible? Borrow a belief, from somebody who's successful in this area, right? And then, what do I need to tell myself every day to stay focused on this? How can I make sure to schedule it in regularly?
I
It will
think for
eventually
this, it
work.
would be like mantras, right?
Yeah.
Like in every day and every way, I'm getting stronger and stronger kind of thing. That kind of mantra.
Sure. It could be something like that, or it could be something as simple as I control what I focus on. I control what I believe. I control what I do. I can change what I believe. I can change what I do. Nobody can change these things. In order to take ownership of our lives instead of victim mentality, I would say that it would be a wisdom antidote for whatever ails us. And that's what we need to take in regular dosage for healing to occur. Right? So I would make it very specific to the challenge the individual has, if possible. Right? And then I would also say, check in with a wise and worthy friend, mentor, or coach and review your progress weekly so they can help to make sure that you're doing this properly, help you get unstuck, make sure you're doing it with good form, and encourage you with some winning momentum. Right? When we're doing this, because we still have the capacity to deceive ourselves. So it's good to just check in with somebody, anybody you could. Right? I love how Steve talked about a bit of confirmation bias. Like, we find what we're looking for, and Tony Robbins, a lot of this conversation has been based on the teachings of Tony Robbins. I want to give full credit there. But Tony Robbins once said, if two people are in a debate, the person who is most certain will eventually win. And I believe that the same goes on for the arguments in our head between the myths and the empowering truth. And we need to build a case for the empowering truth. Get enough references and examples that it is assured victory in the debate of your thought allegiance. Because that is where the biggest battles of your life are going to occur, is within your soul and what you believe. Right? So
I was just thinking how some people pick words for a year that they kind of let represent them that year. And, sometimes you can come up with quotes and everything that align to a word. So if you have something you're struggling with in particular, having a bunch of quotes around that you can use as a reference. Like, I was thinking about fear and fear is a liar, or what if everything you wanted was on the other side of fear? And if you just kind of have these ideas, especially if you've got an emotion or something in particular you're struggling with, that can kind of help you really dial in and focus on how you want to react to that emotion or that feeling.
That's awesome. I started a thing, can't remember how long ago. It's been over a year, where every day when I write my journal, I try to choose one word that I write at the top that describes that day. And, some days it's rain because it's raining really hard here, or it's, tired or stress or sunshine or ocean or, whatever. But I just thought, I'm still going to write about my day, but I wanted the challenge of what's one word that describes that day. But there's so much power in words, right? I mean, the older I get, the more I try to use words that accurately describe something I'm trying to present to somebody. So I no longer use the word cheap when it should be inexpensive, right? Cheap is low quality, inexpensive is low price. And I don't call something cheap when it's inexpensive. I call something cheap when it's a decrepit piece of crap. But deliberately choosing the right word, because our meanings of words change over time too, right? Where and so I kind of like that, where it's there is so much meaning in the word, and a word may have special meaning to us of, you know, humility or deliberation or strength, or, you know, any of these words that, you know, we really want to focus on. But you give your brain something to focus on like that, and, you know, it's just going to go nuts finding it and help make that stick, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just once we make that choice, our brain finds evidence to support it. And I would also say that, you know, right out of the gates, if you have a new empowering belief you're going to be putting in, come up with 3 examples of how you know this new belief is true. Right out of the gates, come up with 3 examples. How do I know this is true? Really start to build that case. So why don't we do this? This is, you know, our topic was these myths, these broken myths we tell ourselves that block our happiness and progress in life, block us from living the life that we're inspired to live. Why don't we go into some key takeaways? And when you do a key takeaway, you also have to then compliment something you like or admire about somebody else in the group. And when you do that, you're nominating them to go next. Okay. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to say, you know, one of my key takeaways was really the example Patty shared. And I really loved it. And it was how somebody, you know, somebody she was chatting with, you know, journaled and came to the realization that they didn't need makeup to feel beautiful, and that they had run an experiment and felt beautiful and been complimented on their beauty after not wearing makeup. And so that was one of my key takeaways. That story, I definitely will stick with me. And on that note, I want to say that I honor and respect Patty Baker. She has a wealth of beautiful knowledge and wisdom, and she truly has a beauty that radiates from within. She just smiles with her whole face and lights up a room because of just this spiritual beauty that she's just glowing with. And so I honor and respect Patty Baker. Patty, it's your turn.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Brendan. And one of the things that I took away from tonight is the power that is in the people that you surround yourself with, because that's really where you get your beliefs from, is from other people. And we can experiment with things on our own, but you get so much momentum and forward movement, and you surround yourself with variety of good people from different places and ages and stages in life, and it allows us to really think through our own myths and bust those out and come up with some new empowering beliefs. So I thank you so much, Brendan, for bringing such a powerful topic for us tonight. And I will have to say, Steve shows up every week, large and in charge. And I love how he came into the room tonight saying, you know, somebody was exposed to COVID and the unawesomeness, he made this word up, the unawesomeness of being at home. And then by the end of the evening, he had talked himself out of that myth. And I really do. Every week, Steve, you bring such insight from adversity into the reality of positivity, right? And so I thank you so much for sharing at such a deep and vulnerable level. You do, in fact, live intentionally from a place of vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency. And I admire that about you. So thanks for sharing.
You make me cry. No, you're the best, Patty. I really enjoyed this, Brent. I think this was a great, discussion. I had some really good takeaways from it. And one was one thing Charmaine said was, trying to be deliberate. And that's an idea, a concept that I've been working on for about a year and a half, 2 years. And the context that I first heard it in was deliberate parenting, trying to, be our children's parents, not their friend, teaching them what they need to know, to move on when I'm gone. And so that's something that has really been on my mind a lot in the last couple of years in relation to my kids. But I loved when Charmaine brought that up about being deliberate in, this context of, because to me, the word deliberate means thoughtful, purposeful, there's intention, there's work, there's effort and sweat behind it. And I love that idea of all of those things, wrap up in the word deliberate for me. And when Charmaine said that, I had written that down right after linking pain to the old belief in order to get lasting change. And so I love that idea that Charmaine brought out with that deliberation, because to me, deliberation is the opposite of path of least resistance. It's the opposite of victimhood. It's the opposite of, giving up. And deliberation marches on in the face of, uphill battles and failures and doubt and all of these things. And so I really appreciate that. And I love, seeing in Charmaine the change in the last year of how kind of timid she was, in the beginning. And maybe it was just kind of how, I saw things. But when we started our group, Charmaine had been kind of coming off the divorce and seemed, kind of tentative, and how's the group going to take me? And, I don't know how I kind of fit in here. And, maybe I'm a little fearful or apprehensive about that. And, I think she's done a total 180 where she comes in with all this strength of, the development in herself, in her relationship with herself, how she views herself, as a professional, what her capabilities are. And that's been, I think, an awesome change for me to see, because you just exude so much more self-confidence, such more, so much more ability and capability. And to me, that's just awesome, to see that. I just love getting on here and, seeing Patty and Charmaine, because, we got enough testosterone here between, Brendan's beard's not that great. It's okay. And, Joel, I don't even know what his problem is right now, but it's awesome to have, both Patty and Charmaine here and give, different perspectives. But I've really enjoyed seeing Charmaine's evolution over the last year, and really kind of come into your own, where I feel like you're standing on your own 2 feet, and you know who you are, where you're going, what you want to do. And, I think out of all of us, you've probably made the most progress in that. And so I applaud you for that.
Thank you, Steve. Gosh. And, I have to say something about the group as a whole. Part of it's just letting people feel that they're safe to say whatever they need to say. And I think everybody here is here to give. And that makes such a tremendous difference. As far as takeaways tonight, I think really just about how important it is, like Patty said, who you surround yourself with, the words that you put in your head and what you feed yourself in that sense. And we're not here to walk in this life alone. And sometimes it's hard to find people who are strong enough to challenge you. And that's something I've struggled with. I need somebody to kind of push me a little bit, and iron sharpens iron. I need that challenge. I need somebody push my beliefs a little bit. Because sometimes, like we said, they're really subconscious, and I believe this until you ask me why. I'm like, well, gee, do I really know why I believe that? Once I'm forced to kind of think about it, and it has to be somebody who doesn't feel threatened and doesn't, I don't feel threatened by them, but we can have that open conversation. And this group has really fostered that. And I think, tonight, just thinking about how important people and words are in our life, and how that really propels us forward is important. So I'm going to pay it forward to Joel and kind of talking about some of the testosterone in this room. And Joel, I think some of the stories that you shared with us, particularly about your past and, the women you dated before and some of those experiences have been really important for me to hear. It's difficult sometimes to find guys who are willing to be vulnerable. And that's something we've definitely benefited from in this group. I certainly have had some challenges, but being able to hear the growth that you've gone through and how you've gotten to where you are in life now, and the lessons that you're willing to share with us that we can learn from that. It's not that you've just grown yourself, but you're willing to share that growth and let us experience that through your eyes so we can internalize it and, hopefully learn those lessons without walking the same hard path that you walked. But that's just such a blessing. And I don't know if we always get a chance to say how much it means to us, but hearing that and learning from it and the energy you show up with every week. I mean, you get on the Zoom and you're just all over the place. I know. Yeah, Patty, we just have that energy and it can't help but, smile whenever we see that and feel that energy ourselves. It's not just energy that, you're exuding, but we all feel it even through the screen. And I think that's just such a blessing to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. I love just showing up with energy because why? If you're going to do something, why not do it? It's like when I go to church, I see so many people that sit like in the back, and I'm like, I'm sitting up front. Like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's like I'm gonna live in the front seat of life and not sit in the back. Some of my takeaways, there's a lot of them, especially as it relates to my desire to help people that are homeless. I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like, but I'm just realizing the power of questions. Some of what Brennan talked about of, even the fill in the blanks are great. Getting to the root of what their perceived problems are. What holds me back is what is it that holds you back? And, and going to, as you talked about, who controls what you focus on, who controls what you believe. Of course you do. How fast can you change that like that? Because so often people get in this mindset of like, oh, well, this thing happened to me a long time ago. It's permanently damaged me. I have to carry this big burden. It's like, no, if you want, sure, you can carry it, but you can also change like that if you want to. And so I just had a lot of really great insights in the power of questions. And I also really love, Brendan, how you have the framework of this as myths. What I would often think of it as something like mortal mind or mortal thinking or whatever, but the framework of the myth is great because people know what a myth is. It's like this falsity that we tell ourselves, and I don't think people are aware how much of that kind of talk and thinking comes into everybody's thought. And if you're not aware, if you don't catch that as it comes in and you just accept that, like, oh yeah, I guess I am limited. I guess I don't have this. I guess I'll never be this. I guess there's no way I can do that because I haven't done it before. If you don't challenge that, you don't let it in, it rules your life. And so it's just a great reminder to always challenge everything that comes in and only let in those things that move you towards your higher self, or that up your game, or that move you to help others, or to uplift your life and whatever that looks like. So I'm really grateful, and I liked Charmaine's comment about verbalizing. It took me a minute to think about it, but I talked earlier about how sometimes I'm challenged with looking at everything that has yet to be done and not giving myself credit for the little things that I've accomplished. And I think verbalizing that could be a really help. Like, yes, I just got something done. It's like one less thing off my list. Yes, I'm moving forward. Instead of like, it's like I got so much to do, I can't possibly get it done. So I think verbalizing is something I want to try to actively do in my own experience when I'm doing things I think that'll help move me into the right direction. I just want to give a shout out to Chris. When I think of Chris, I think of tenacity, because he's always like, he's not just like sitting back in the passenger seat, like letting things happen. He may think sometimes that he is, but I think of tenacity because he's always trying to dig down deep quickly to root out, whatever the challenge is that he's focused on. I think sometimes he doesn't give himself enough credit, and maybe think that the answer lies with somebody else or down the road. But I think it's right here and now you have the truth that you need. And I think that's just our creator that always meets our needs in every moment and always has the answer. But I just really love that he's always really challenging his own life or whatever's in his life that's being a challenge, to rise to the occasion, to get the best out of it. And I really appreciate that about him. We've had so many calls where he just, he goes off on stuff that I would have never even have considered an aspect of our conversation. And it's just really awesome insight. And so, for that and for your tenacity, I thank you. And as all of us do here, we honor you.
Chris, you're on mute.
I am. Thank you, Joel. I really do appreciate that. And thank you for bringing that perspective in the ways that I do contribute, because sometimes I'm not even aware of it. I know I occasionally go on my leadership rants and say, well, that's about all I'm doing right now. But thanks for, making it, over this past year, I've really grown with this group, and I really have evolved differently. And thank you for being here for when those challenges came up. And I love having this tribe here so that when those crises do come up, like with January, with my taking a trip to my mom's, or dealing with my issue with Marge, that issue was a gift, because I couldn't have made those changes if those things had not happened. And having this group here to help me really focus and harness that is a very different experience than just doing it by yourself. I'm dealing with 4 or 5 other professionals who can help guide me and feed me information and give me their perspective on things. I've been doing it for so long. This has been wonderful. The group has really helped me focus and see things differently so I can change more effectively, like the thing we did with the values that's now leading to this, which is talking about the beliefs and the myths, and that's going to cause more change and more evolution. And I think a lot of us have gotten those changes and evolutions throughout the year as well. And I thank Brendan for putting this group together in the first place. We would not be here without him being the leader of the dojo, because he's the one who comes prepared with the information. What do you want to talk about? Are you having a crisis? It's amazing that you come in with, are you having a crisis? So it allows one of the team members to be able to speak up, I have a problem, can you help me? So it comes from a very different situation to, like Brendan, all right, this is what we're going to talk about, and this is what we're doing. It's a different care of this group that you've developed with us, Brendan, that's been amazing. And I've never had this in my life before, to be absolutely honest, when I really think about it. So I love and thank all of you for being in my life. And I thank you, Brendan, for making this be a possibility in my life. If I had not been at that UPW, if you had not collected me from the room, I would not be in this group. And I think the training that you've been doing for us has been fabulous. And I think you've seen changes and evolutions in all of us over the past year that we've probably not even realized. Because you're like I said, you're the sensei of the dojo here. So you see how people are evolving. You've done this professionally for 20 years. You see things that we don't even yet see. And you share that wisdom with us every time you're on. And even say, you got a problem? Just email me. I'll help. Your eyes, your ears, your knowledge, your wisdom is always available to us. And brother, I love you for that.
Thank you very much, brother. And I believe that all goodness comes through me, not from me. So I will accept that. Thank you very much, and I will accept it on behalf of the true source of goodness that works through all of us. And I want to honor and acknowledge all of you for sharing your love and wisdom here today as a gift to strangers who may watch the recording in the future, because we care about other people too, even if they're not on this call. Life is hard, so let's all stick together and help each other out. And that's what conversations like this are all about, bringing clarity to the confusion and dark ignorance that we suffer from. And those false things we tell ourselves are true are definitely a great source of suffering for all of us. So it helps to get clear on how we can double check that stuff and correct that stuff so that we can take deliberate control over our beliefs in order to direct our lives where we want to go. All right, let's do go team on 3, fist bump, group hug. We're out of here. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Go team!
Go team!
Go team! Go team! Thank
Love you
brothers
guys.
and
Have an awesome
sisters.
week.
Have a good week.
Love you guys.